Welcome to the Customer Management IQ video interview series. I'm your host, Corey Bennett, and we are on site at the 12th Annual Call Center Week in Las Vegas. Joining me right now is Philip Bennett, Executive Vice President of Signature Services at Options Express, an online stock trading service. Philip's presentation this morning was titled, How to Be Innovative and Get Your Ideas Heard! Exclamation point. He joins me right now to talk a bit about some of those ideas and expand on that a bit. So, Philip, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me here.
Sure. I wanted to start off, one of the concepts you emphasize, managing up versus managing down, and the fact that managers especially need to know how to do both.
Absolutely.
So can you explain these two concepts a bit for those who might not know, and talk about how you train frontline staff to manage up to their managers?
Sure. Well, you know, it's interesting because most managers, when they reach that level, have pretty much learned how to manage their staff.
Sure.
For most, it's an organic process. Some of them learn it along the way, but you know, they know how to manage the staff that's underneath them. But the problem is they need to learn how to manage the people that are above them as well. And you know, one of the things that I always tell people who are in this arena is, you know, you need to understand what the goals of your supervisor are.
Yeah.
And you need to make them part of your goals so that, you know, when you're managing your staff and you're dealing with them, that you can, you know, present to them on a level where you both communicate. And it's really incumbent upon the junior person to learn to communicate with the senior person. And it's not always easy. It can sometimes be very, very tricky to do.
I'm also interested in the concept of, you know, not only good ideas, but then making sure you achieve them. How do you set benchmarks that are appropriate, ambitious, but also achievable?
Right. Well, the first thing you do is you start with the big goal and work backwards from there. So if you know what your ultimate goal is that you want to attain, you break it down into smaller and smaller bits. And, you know, that makes everything, you know, it makes a very, very large task much easier to achieve. And so, you know, you just have to set benchmarks, make sure you're hitting your targets along the way. And if you do everything properly and you've got your roadmap laid out, you know, the ultimate end is to reach the final goal.
So from your experience, what are some good ideas you've seen come out of your frontline staff that are these kind of achievable, ambitious but achievable goals, and maybe that have come out, in your opinion, because of that training to manage up?
Well, you know, the interesting thing about that is that your frontline staff is such a wealth of information. They deal with your customers every single day. They hear what the customers are saying about how, you know, whatever interactions you know, they have with your company, and they get the ratings. So they get the ideas from the customers. Customers tell them what works and what doesn't work. They know directly from working trying to help the customers what works and doesn't work. So they've got tons and tons of ideas. And if you don't tap into that, I mean, there is just a wealth of information. I mean, we've taken things, process improvements that have made, you know, everybody's life easier. We've removed pain points for customers just by listening to the frontline staff say, you know, customer told me this wasn't working for them, we really need to fix it. Frequently, if we have an IT issue, our frontline staff will know before the IT guys do. And, you know, it's really critical that you listen to it. And once they understand what your goals are, they're willing to share that information with you. As long as you don't shut them out or belittle it, you know, they'll keep feeding that information to you. And so not only do they capture the voice of the customer, but you can also get the voice of the frontline employee as well. So
you mentioned that most people kind of grow into knowing how to manage down. What are some new ways, though, that frontline staff are expecting to be managed in the coming years that managers are going to have to learn a bit about how to manage down? Things like, you know, flexible schedule or things like that. What are you seeing emerging?
Well, you know, you've got at-home agents. We don't do anything with them yet, but we have done some stuff with it in the past. You have flexible scheduling, you have family time, you have Generation Y, and I'm not sure what the next generation is called.
Have we defined it yet?
But the interesting thing is, as someone who was born in the 60s of our last century, dealing with a workforce that was born in the late 90s, or well, early 90s, I suppose, it's very tricky because...
What are the successful ways that you think people are going to have to learn how to manage? You know, you mentioned a lot of those. Are all of those things that people actually should be having as frontline staff, or that are profitable?
Not all of them. Kind of the biggest problem is somewhere in the 90s we had this idea that you know, we had to treat our children like they were very precious and very special, and everybody's been told since they were infants that, you know, that the world moves around them.
Yeah, it makes failing a lot harder.
Well, that's another interesting thing. We've
Yeah.
discouraged failure in our society.
Okay.
And the truth of the matter is failure is the most tremendous learning tool there is. If you watch a child fail at a project, you understand very quickly that he learns how to or she learns how to overcome and succeed in those situations. But the problem is if you discourage it throughout high school and their educational process, they don't understand how to handle it when it does happen, and it's inevitable. It will happen.
So how has that manifested yourself in your experience as a manager of frontline staff?
Well, you kind of have to, it's kind of a kid-glove process, and you really have to get them to understand that you know, I understand their goals. I know that they want to succeed and they want to get ahead and they want to be heard, but they have to understand what, you know, our needs are as senior management and how we need to, you know, get past the I in that and make it part of a team.
Great. So let's change topics a bit to talk about technology.
Great topic.
Had a frontline staff, a lot of new emerging technologies. In your opinion, what are some of the best emerging call center technologies, and what are some of the most popular ones in the coming year that also are good for business, not just popular?
Right. It's going to be very interesting. Probably the most interesting dynamic that's occurred lately is, you know, kind of the rise of voice analytics.
Sure.
And, you know, 3-4 years ago, it pretty much didn't exist. And today, it's becoming a very effective tool in the call center space. Integrated CRMs that pull in all the information and data so it's all compiled in one area. So you don't build silos of information that don't talk to each other. And you know, the rep is getting a much more holistic viewpoint of the customer so that they can handle the customer on a much better basis. You know, when a frontline rep's talking to a customer and they notice something that's a bit of information over here, they can actually address it with a customer and say, you know, Mr. Customer, if you had, say, an IRA with us, you know, you could reduce your tax burden this year or something like that. And it is an overlap between sales and service. And customers really don't mind being sold when it's something that will truly improve and be a benefit to them.
So which of these technologies that you mentioned are beneficial for small companies, or I guess more realistic for small companies?
Yeah, that's a lot harder, and we are a small company, so we don't have the luxury of, you know, going out and bringing in. You know, you have to be very choosy about it. Definitely CRM. You've got to have some sort of holistic way of tracking your customer issues and a way to get data back out of it so that you can improve your processes. Other than that, I would say probably starting to look towards the social media side. I don't necessarily see it as one of the best tools for service. I think you have to take it offline as quickly as possible. Doing service in a public environment is very, very difficult to do properly. So I believe you have to take it offline, but what I really believe that these social media tools are going to give us is a way to determine how emotionally engaged your customers are.
How is Options Express leverage social media?
Well, basically, we started about 7 years ago building an internal forum, and so we allowed our customers to post. Interestingly enough, back in 2000 when we first went online, it's hard to believe, but the internet was still fairly new at that point. I mean, but most of the people that were online were either college students or traders looking to get information and take it out. So on forum boards, our customers would say how good we were and you know, that they really liked us. That really provided an initial lift to us when we first got started. What happened afterwards, competition started cropping up. It became much more static.
Of course.
So the internal message boards were the way to go. And what we would do is we would allow our customers to post anything they wanted, except for a commercial for another firm. I won't let them advertise on our site because you don't know who's on the other side of that computer. It might be your competition. We've caught them in the act, so to speak. But the fact of the matter is, if they have a gripe, if they have a beef, we want to encourage them so that they get it out there. You have to embrace complaints, and you have to be willing to understand that while you think what you have is a great product and a great process, that there will be customers that won't agree with that, and you have to be willing to listen, understand where they're coming from, empathize with them, work with them. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you may find that you need to improve your processes, or you may find that you have to say to the customer, we understand this is a difference of opinion, hopefully you'll stay with us. And if you treat them properly, a lot of times they absolutely will.
Yeah. One thing you've told me previously is that most technologies overpromise and underperform.
That's true.
Underdeliver, as it is. Can you name one that does the opposite, that underpromises and overdelivers?
You know, that's an interesting. The one that comes to mind for me is LivePerson.
Okay.
It's a chat provider. They are probably one of the they are one of the pioneers in the field of chat technology. Chat is one of those things that has been sold improperly, and the problem is when they sold it. And it wasn't just LivePerson; it was everybody. Nobody knew what they had back in the late 90s,
just
early
a cool
2000s.
Toy at that point.
Yeah, it was another way of talking, but nobody really understood what the product was.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, we started our call center as a chat center, not a call center. Most call centers, when they started adopting chat, were fully established, very large call centers, and they approached it as another phone call. And the problem is it's a completely different skill set.
Of course.
Used properly, chat can be probably the most efficient customer service tool you'll ever use in your life. We have chat agents that can take anywhere between 3 and 6 chats at a time.
Oh my gosh.
Deal with customers all day long. For an 8-hour shift, we would average per rep 3 chats per rep over an entire 8-hour shift, and that doesn't allow for breaks. And I mean, that's just the solid 8 hours divided by the number of chats.
Wow.
And reps. So it's an extremely efficient tool. You can only talk to one person on the phone at a time.
Of course.
The big problem is that it hasn't been deployed really well across the industry. So customers get a bad experience with it, and they're very reluctant to try it again. Yeah. And you know, there's some new firms coming out. I think InContact is one of them that has married an FAQ system with their chat system that literally pops a suggested response to the rep and allows the rep to push it. Now, I don't know that that would work in our environment because we're very efficient in how we do chat, but it's a very good way for companies that haven't really rolled it out well to take it and run with it and provide a quality experience for the customer. That way they don't get turned off by doing it. I mean, you know, I've had the experience, and probably a lot of our customers have. So
I almost never use live chat myself because I've had terrible experiences. But you think we'll get there?
I do believe we'll get. I think you have to. We're increasingly moving into a virtual world. You look at the popularity of Facebook. You look at the popularity of LinkedIn and Twitter, and these are all text-based. These are all communicating with other people and the greater virtual world as a whole in text format. And at some point in time, I think that you'll either use a product like LivePerson to communicate, or even just straight text, and you'll be texting back and forth from your phone. It'll
be interesting to see when we get there.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks so much for sharing your insight. I appreciate you joining me today.
Corey, I appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
And to our viewers out there, you can check out more of our videos at customermanagementiq.com. Once again, I'm your host, Corey Bennett. Until next time, thanks for watching.